with the basic chapter that we'll be looking at, the big chapter that we'll be looking at here, is we look at the life of Isaac and what I called the lesson, the forgotten patriarch. I hope by the end of the lesson you'll see what we mean by that. The life of Isaac, I think, is kind of a surprising story when you see it all big picture. Maybe you've heard lessons on the sacrifice of Isaac or on Jacob deceiving Isaac, but maybe not so much on the life of Isaac as a whole. But I really think this is an encouraging story, an encouraging lesson for us to see and to have in our hearts about what living by faith looks like. So some major events in the life of Isaac. Of course, he was born. And then fairly soon after that, problems with Ishmael, his stepbrother, and Hagar, Sarah's handmaid, that Abraham drives them away. So Ishmael and Hagar are gone after Ishmael's caused kind of a problem there. When Isaac is a young boy-ish at some point, we have the famous story of Abraham offering Isaac on the altar. We looked at that a little bit in Genesis 22 in our last lesson. Genesis 24, Abraham's servant goes and gets Isaac a wife. A great story there. Abraham says, you can't get a woman from here. Go find Isaac a wife. He travels and goes, meets Rebekah at the well, brings her home. And now Isaac and Rebekah are married. Genesis 26 is the story of Isaac's journeys to Gerar in the Philistines and to Beersheba. And then Genesis 27 is when Jacob deceives his father. We know that story, right? Jacob, to get the blessing, puts on the clothes and the goat skin and brings in the food, pretending to be his brother to receive that blessing. At the end of his life, we're told in Genesis 35 that Jacob and Esau come and bury their father, Isaac. Those are some of the big events there. We're really going to be looking at chapter 26. And Isaac's stories there. Really kind of the main story, kind of the main chapter of Isaac's adventures in the promised land that we're given. So let's look at Genesis 26. We're going to end up reading this almost this entire chapter and kind of talking about it as we go. Read with me verses 1 through 5. Genesis 26, 1 through 5. And there's a famine in the land besides the former famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. And the Lord appeared to him and said, do not go down to Egypt, dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and bless you, for to you and to your offspring I will give all these lands. I will establish the oath that I swore to Abraham, your father. I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and will give to your offspring all these lands. And in your offspring all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. So there's a famine, and Isaac is told by God, don't go down to Egypt. Abraham did that in the days of a famine. He says you need to sojourn in this land, so he's going to end up going to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines there. So I'm guessing he goes over towards the coast, a little bit west of probably where he had been. And he says, you're going to sojourn in this land. And do you see some of the exact words and phrases that God told to Abraham? He says, you go to the place where I tell you, sojourn in that land, I'll bless you, and I'll multiply your offspring, all those things. So much of the repeated ideas, commandments given to Isaac that were given to his father. So what happens to Isaac there? Well, let's start with me in verse 6 again. We'll read verses 6 through 11. So Isaac settled in Gerar. When the man of the place asked him about his wife, he said, she's my sister. For he feared to say, my wife, thinking, lest the man of the place should kill me because of Rebekah, because she was attractive in appearance. When he had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out of the window and saw Isaac laughing with Rebekah, his wife. So Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, she's your wife. How then could you say she's my sister? Isaac said to him, because I thought, lest I die because of her. Abimelech said, what is this that you've done to us? One of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us. So Abimelech warned all the people, saying, whoever touches this man or his wife surely be put to death. So you get to Gerar, and Isaac, does it sound familiar? Isaac sees that his wife is attractive and says, I need to protect her. So he tells a lie. He says, this is my sister. just like his father Abraham did with his wife Sarah. Well, Abimelech's looking out and he sees them laughing together. And remember, Isaac's name means laughter. And he sees them laughing. Whatever that was, clued him in. This is not brother and sister, this is a husband and wife. So he calls him in and he says, "What have you done? This is your wife. How could you say she's your sister?" And, difficult moment here. Isaac has to say, "Because I thought you'd kill me." He says, "No, what have you done? We could have taken her from our wife. That would have been adultery, brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech warns them, says, "Don't touch this man or his wife. Whoever does that shall surely be put to death." So they stayed there in that land a little bit longer. Pick up with me verse 12. Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. The Lord blessed him, and the man became rich and gained more and more until he became very wealthy. He had possessions of flocks and herds and many servants. So the Philistines envied him. Now the Philistines had stopped and filled with earth all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father. And Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we." So Isaac departed from there and encamped in the valley of Gerar. So now he's in the valley of Gerar, and settled there. And Isaac dug again the wells of water that had been dug in the days of Abraham his father, which the Philistines had stopped after the death of Abraham. And he gave them the names that his father had given to them. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found there a well of spring water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water's ours." So he called the name of the well Esek, because they contended with him. Then they dug another well, and they quarreled over that also. So he called its name Sitnah. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. So he called its name Rehoboth, saying, "For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land." And there he went up to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, "I am the God of Abraham your father. Don't be afraid. I am with you, and will bless you and multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake." So he built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants dug a well. So Isaac stayed there with Abimelech, with the Philistines, and actually became a little bit of a farmer. Sowed and reaped 100-fold. God's blessing him. He's becoming rich. He's got lots of herds and servants. Now the Philistines are envious of him. And so now they want him to go away. Abimelech says in verse 16, "Go away, now you're mightier than us." I don't know how that works. You got a lot of stuff, you're rich, someone to make you mad by kicking you out. Whatever reason was, that made sense to them to do. So Isaac leaves. And they ask him to go, and so he goes. Well, verse 17, he ends up in the valley of Gerar. And there he redigs some of these wells. The wells that his father had built had been stopped up with earth. And so he digs these wells as well. Well, verse 19, they dig a well, but the herdsmen of Gerar, these Philistines, they come and say, "No, you can't have this. This is our water." So he tries again, digs another well, and they come, No, this is our water. This is our well. You can't have this. And he tries a third time, and they don't quarrel over it. And he names that place Rehoboth, which means room, plenty of space. For now the Lord's made room for us, and we're fruitful in the land. Eventually he heads south down to Beersheba. And the Lord comes to him in that night and says, "Don't be afraid. I'm with you." So Isaac, it says there in verse 25, builds an altar and calls on the name of the Lord, pitching his tent there. Now, if you know Abraham's story, that is word for word what Abraham does. Back even in Genesis 12, those first Abraham stories. Abraham built altars. Abraham called on the name of the Lord. He's acting just like his father here. And they dig a well. Well, let's see how the story ends up. Verse 26. When Abraham went from him to Gerar with Huzath, his advisor, and Pichol, the commander of his army, Isaac said to them, "Why have you come to me, saying that you hate me and have sent me away from you?" They said, "We see plainly that the Lord has been with you." So we said, "Let there be a sworn pact between us, between you and us. Then let there be a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you and have done to you nothing but good and sent you away in peace. You are now blessed of the Lord." So he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. In the morning they rose early and exchanged oaths. And Isaac sent them on their way, and they departed from him in peace. That same day Isaac's servants came and told him about the well that they had dug, and said to him, "We have found water." He called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. I got behind on my points. So, God repeats this promise. Isaac goes to Gerar, lies. He's pushed around by the Philistines. Has to move to Beersheba. Now, after all of this, who shows up again? Did you catch that? It's Abimelech again. He shows up with his guys and says, hey, let's make a treaty. He says, what? Isaac says, why do you come to me? It seems that you hate me. You sent me away. And Abimelech says to him, we see that God has blessed you. So we thought, hey, let's make this sworn agreement so there be peace. Did you hear what Abimelech says to him? Just as we've not touched you, done nothing but good, sent you away in peace. Isaac's thinking, okay, right. Well, what does Isaac do? Does Isaac say, you see the front door, get out of here? No. Isaac says, okay. And he humbly makes his agreement with them. Not only that, Isaac, seems to me, verse 30, fits the bill for the feast. He makes them a feast. Feeds them, makes this feast, and in the morning they exchange oaths, and Abimelech and his men go on their merry way. Isaac, showing great humility here when Abimelech comes and asks for this treaty, and there getting another well in the area of Beersheba, naming it Beersheba as his father Abraham had done. Okay, what are some lessons from the life of Isaac? Well, again, I've been doing this with the lesson, right? Let's hit on some bullet points of some lessons we can see. But let's make these points before we get into the main lesson. Now we see Isaac repeating the sin of his father, Abraham. Isaac here shows up, he's afraid, he's intimidated, looks at his wife, says, I'm scared because they're going to kill me to take her. And he lies, just as his father had done, even down to the details of the lie. She's my sister. And don't we see that tendency in ourselves? A tendency in ourselves to commit the same sins of our parents if we are not careful. It's sad, the statistics and the number of children of alcoholics who become alcoholics themselves. You think, wouldn't you of all people know that that's going to ruin your life and make things so bad and so hard, ruin everything? But when that's what you know at home, even when it's destructive, it's hard to leave that pattern. We just see that in our world, and in so many ways. So what we need is God's help. What we need is for God to deep down to change us. Because if not, when we're not thinking, when we're not on point, we're going to fall into those sins of what we're used to. The sins of our parents are just going to come back into our life unless we're careful. But with God's help, we can avoid those things. With God's help, we can change and grow and not make those same mistakes. Maybe it's a mistake, but it's a new variation. So mom and dad never had self-control with money, so I never have self-control with food. Or mom and dad were scared, lived in anxiety about this, and now I'm scared and live in anxiety about that. Different variation, but it's the same problem. And what we need to do is to be not like mom and dad, but to choose to be like our Heavenly Father. He's the one who can make us new and change us and break those chains of sin passed on from generation to generation and make us new in Christ. And a really deep down change is like we need. Have you thought about this verse in that context? Therefore, be imitators of God as beloved children. Children aren't good at lots of things, right? Children aren't good at feeding themselves, dressing themselves. You know, I got a kid. Hey, you've been in this world like 9 months. Can't you get yourself a glass of water? They're not good at that kind of thing. Kids are great at imitating. That's what they do. They're imitators. So he says, be ye imitators of God like loved children. We need to act and look like our Heavenly Father. Break those chains of sin that the devil can use for generation, and choose to be like our Heavenly Father. God can do that. So that we don't be like Isaac, making the same mistakes as our father does. Another lesson we can learn. Isaac really does make the faith of his father his own. Abraham, great man of faith. That was what we just talked about. Isaac really makes his faith his own. But the call is the same. That same terminology that we saw in the beginning of chapter 26. Go to the land where I tell you to go. I'll establish my oath. I'll bless you. All those things. Isaac's really called the same thing. You know, his call to stay in the land. God says, live here, sojourn in this land that I will give to you and to your descendants. Very similar call. The same obedience required. Go where God told him to go. And Isaac did that. Isaac did not choose to throw that off. You know, I'm not going to do this. Live in tents. This is terrible. I could establish myself somewhere. No, he chose to live the life of faith, staying as a sojourner in the land of Canaan, even when it was difficult to do so. Maybe he wanted to go to Egypt, and God said, don't go to Egypt, stay in the land. And so he goes to be with Abimelech and the Philistines. And Isaac worships God, building altars, calling on the name of the Lord, just as his father had done. And we didn't cover this section, but in the next chapter, Isaac's going to pass on that blessing to his son. Thinking it's Esau, pass it to Jacob, but that you see that picture of faith, passing that on. So yes, Isaac fell into the sins of his father, easy for us to do as well. But we also see Isaac really made his father's faith his own. And he had to choose to live that faith in the land of Canaan. Of course, that's for me and you, right? We may have been born into a family of faith. Not everyone here had that, but we may have grown up hearing about the Bible, knowing about God, singing songs, and go to church. You're going to have to make that faith your own. You're going to have to make some choices and decide, I believe this, and I'm going to do what God says. It really doesn't matter what mom or dad end up doing. I'm going to serve the Lord. It doesn't matter what my friends end up doing. I'm going to serve the Lord. And make that faith your own, no matter how strong or weak your parents were with them. What I really want to focus on, though, is this principle right here. Isaac is an incredible example of humility and meekness in his life. Let me make this statement. It's a funny statement, but I think it's true. Isaac lives about one of the least exciting, most insignificant lives of any person in all the Bible. Now, I say that kind of from a worldly perspective, right? He just doesn't do much exciting, doesn't do much that's interesting or notable, but he just lived kind of a boring, unexciting life there in Canaan. I want you to think about some of these points here. He's the only patriarch who's born and dies in the land of Canaan. Abraham grew up in Ur, there for a long time, exciting things there. God calls him, and he comes and lives in Canaan, dies there. Jacob, born land of Canaan, he has some adventures over, getting his wives, comes back land of Canaan, and then he dies down in Egypt with Joseph. They go back and bury him there, but you see, Isaac doesn't have that. Isaac's the one of those three patriarchs, born in Canaan, lived in Canaan, died in Canaan. The least eventful of those three patriarchs' lives. What does he do? He just kind of lives his life awaiting the promise. He does some things here. He gets some more cows along the way, farms along the way, but he just awaits the promise of God, putting his trust in what God has said. And from a worldly perspective, he just doesn't accomplish very much. What does he do? He lives as a sojourner his entire life, not really doing much. And really the stuff that he does is basically the stuff his dad did. He basically does the exact same things his father did. We just read this chapter. So much of Isaac's one big chapter here, Genesis 26. He's kind of repeating the things that his father had done. Let me make a point from the structure of the book of Genesis. I love talking about structure. Don't get me started on structure. I love structure. And the main structural element in the book of Genesis is this repeated refrain, these are the generations. Maybe you've studied that. Maybe you've seen that. And it shows up in 2:4, 5:1, other places. And really what that means is what you're about to hear are the stories of the kids of that person. So these are the stories of the children of, fill in the blank. And so you kind of see that. So if it were, these are the generations of Adam, what that would mean is we're about to hear some stories about Adam's children. It doesn't say that, but imagine it said that. So we have in chapter 11, verse 27. These are the generations of Terah. And what do we find out? We get some stories about Abram and Lot and those kind of generations, those people. Then in 25, these are the generations of Isaac. And we get the stories about Isaac's kids, Jacob and Esau, their interactions. Genesis 37, these are the generations of Jacob. And that starts our stories about Jacob's children, mostly Joseph and Judah. And so we kind of see that. Now, these are our structural markers. These are our flags as we go through the book. Do you notice that something's missing? Well, what's missing? There's no generations of Abraham. What does that mean? What that means is our friend Isaac doesn't have a section in the book of Genesis. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We say those names, they roll off the tongue. And Isaac doesn't even get his own section. Now, I want you to put yourself in Isaac's shoes here. Imagine you have some great-grandkid. The Lord allows the world to keep going for that long. He has some great-grandkid that's going to write a history of his ancestors, and he gives a chapter to his great-great-great-granddad and great-great-granddad and great-granddad, goes through, and as he's writing a book, you don't get your own chapter. You just get lumped in at the end of your dad's chapter. And then the things it tells about your life are kind of just the things that you did just like Dad. He did that, just like Dad did that, and just like Dad. That's Isaac in the book of Genesis. Here's how one person put it. This is by Nathan Ward. He's a Christian, a friend of mine down in Tampa. He kind of wrote a commentary of sorts in the book of Genesis. It's a great book. This is what he says. Although Isaac is the second of the great patriarchs of faith, the information given about him is limited. And usually he's in the background scenes of his father's story, chapter 22, his servant's story, chapter 24, or his son's story, 27. The one exception is chapter 26, which we just read. And even there, to a large degree, he's merely following in his father's pattern. From a literary standpoint, Isaac is a non-entity. There's no section of Genesis specifically dedicated to him, as there is for Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, and Judah. Isaac does not have a story. Now you see what we're talking about with Isaac, the forgotten patriarch here. You look again at the major events of the life of Isaac. We looked at this, looked at 27, and you see how little Isaac even does in here. He is offered by his father. He doesn't even get his own wife. He's deceived by his kids. And the one chapter we get about him is mostly about him being pushed around by other people. Isaac is an incredible example of humility and meekness. Do you know this passage? I love this passage. James chapter 3. Who among you is wise and understanding? James almost calling us to look out among the room. Who among you really is wise and mature in understanding? Let him show by good conduct that his works are done in the meekness of wisdom. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. James is saying, who's the ones who are really wise among you? Is it those who can stand up and preach that great lesson, who can just say all the things, who know all the answers to all the questions? He says, who's really wise and Christ-like among you? Let him show that by his actions, by the meekness of wisdom. And the meekness of wisdom is first of all pure, no ill motive, just full of love and faith and goodness. Gentle, peaceable, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits. Isaac spent his life willing to yield, waiting for the promise, living a boring life without much exciting to tell. That's the world's perspective on Isaac. And we come to Matthew chapter 8. I tell you, many will come from east and west and recline at table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, while the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. After Isaac's long, difficult, pushed around life, where does he end up? In the kingdom. In the kingdom. And that's the example that Isaac is for us. Are we meek people? Are we meek people? Are we gentle, lowly, willing to yield, slow to anger, obedient? When God tells us to do stuff, we do it. We don't push it back, we don't fight back, we just do what God says. Humble, selfless, unassuming. I like this phrase. Don't misunderstand me by it, but 2 steps above doormat. And it's clever, right? Doormat steps. What do I mean by that? I don't mean by that don't stand up for the truth. I don't mean by that don't fight for the faith. What I mean by that is if my wife needs me to do something, I do it. It doesn't matter what it is. Or if I need something to do something for my kids, or if there's something I need to do for my parents, I do it. I'm a humble servant who just does the things that I need to do. I put here 2 Timothy 2:24, patiently enduring evil. That's in the context of Paul telling Timothy, look, when you're teaching people, there's going to be difficulty. But a servant of God needs to be able to teach people, patient, willing to endure evil, correcting your opponents with gentleness. And you think, wait a second, when I'm teaching people, how much endurance do I need? How much do I need to be patiently enduring evil? I'm sitting across the table with someone at Starbucks. They're in my neighborhood, teaching the Bible. How much evil am I enduring there? Well, you ask people, there's a lot of evil you have to endure, even just in teaching people the gospel. People are rude, people are self-focused, people just sit there and talk all day, and you're like, I'm here to teach you God's word, and all you want to do is talk about yourself. And just patient, work with people, calm. It's being meek. It's doing what God says. And it's trying to be like Isaac. Are we willing to, in those kind of ways, to be pushed around? To just do God's work, do what's needed in a humble way. Are we willing to do those humble tasks, those kind of foot-washing kind of tasks that are required of us? Let me ask this. Would your family, or teacher, boss, restaurant server, waiter, waitress, the cashier, you name it, would they describe you as meek, gentle, obedient, calm, slow to anger, serving, helpful, unassuming? Or would they describe you as difficult, demanding, self-focused, irritable, picky, you're right? What is it that God's calling us to be? God's calling us to be gentle, willing to yield, meek, helpful people. Do I live in the meekness of wisdom, as James 3:13 says? Or am I kind of a troublemaker? I'm kind of interested in stirring stuff up. Am I submissive to others? Or am I pretty defensive of my rights? Hey, that's my rights. I don't have to do that. Who are going to tell me I got to do that? Show me book, chapter, and verse where I got to da-da-da-da. Or do I, as Paul tells us, submit to the needs of others? Do I work with people, work with brethren? Am I humble and meek? And if you aren't willing to be pushed around in those kind of ways, you show the faith of Isaac. The man who, when he dug a well, and these guys come and say, you can't have that well, it's ours. And moved on. And it happens again. It happens again. And then he has all the gall to show up and say, hey, I can see that God's blessed you, and I'm kind of afraid you're going to come back and be mean to me, so let's make an agreement. And Isaac says, okay. And he does it. That's the faith. That's the humility and the meekness of Isaac. And number two with Isaac, my other point I want to make with his humility and meekness is, are we willing to live forgetful lives? Brothers and sisters, I want you to live out the adventure of your faith. These grand things that God can call us to, I want you to live. I want you to dream big and pray big and live big. And if you want to go to Africa or to Eastern Europe or you name it, New York City, of all places, do it. Live for the Lord. Do great things for Him. Serve Him and save as many people as you can in the time that we have here. Be like David and serve your generation. I want you to do that, setting your sights high. But I want you to remember that as you live that adventure of your faith, it won't usually feel like an adventure. Living in New York City was pretty cool for a while. And then it just got tired. It doesn't feel like an adventure every day. We just want a nap. And you could talk to Lee and others. How much of their adventure felt like an adventure? It doesn't. It doesn't. And we remember that principle from Ecclesiastes. We just won't be remembered long. Serve the Lord. Help the people we can. Knowing that if the world keeps on spinning, we'll be forgotten. Kind of like our friend Isaac is forgotten. Are we willing to live that? Are we looking for an exciting life? Are we excited about the life to come? Are we trying to make our name known? Are we trying to make His name known? Trying to live it up here, or are we trying to live for others? And are we willing to be an unsung saint? That saint who's busy working, living out our faith. No one notices. Maybe no one down here even cares. But the Lord knows, and the Lord cares. And that's what's important, is to be known by Him. Because when we love, God says, I know my people. And we're willing to be an unsung saint. And that humble life of service in the kingdom is going to bring great reward. So we can live this forgettable life, this lame, boring life like Isaac, born and dying as a wanderer in Canaan. But to recline at table with the Lord, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom. And that's our reward. There's a hymn that we have sung. I don't know if you guys have ever sung here. It's not in these books. But I was introduced to this hymn by Stephen Rouse. It's called We Sing for All the Unsung Saints. This is the first and last verse of that hymn. We sing for all the unsung saints, that countless, nameless throng, who kept the faith and passed it on with hope steadfast and strong. Through all the daily griefs and joys no chronicles record, forgetful of their lack of fame, but mindful of the Lord. So we take heart from unknown saints, bereft of earthly fame, those faithful ones who have received a more enduring name. For they reveal true blessing comes when we our pride efface and offer back our lives to be the vessels of God's grace. Maybe you're going through something right now that you just feel like you'll never get out of. Maybe you're going through a family struggle, or a health struggle, or a job struggle. And you just feel like, I've been in this so long, I'll never get out. Maybe remember that there is hope. Just keep living this life of faith, this forgotten, ignored life of faith. But the Lord knows us. The Lord knows those who are His, and you can trust in Him. And the reward is coming. And this kind of humility is what God calls us to. Can we help you in any way spiritually? There may be those here who need to be baptized for their sins to be washed away. There may be people here who just need prayers, who need encouragement. Maybe you want to study the Bible. We want to help. Please let us know. Maybe even now we stand and sing a song of encouragement.